Two suns rose over the Zenther dominion, painting the skies in molten gold and deep violet. Their combined light struck the crystalline palace of Vorin, a towering spire that seemed less built than grown, carved from living crystal that pulsed faintly with ancient energy. From afar, it looked like fingers of light clawing at the heavens, each shard-like tower humming with the weight of centuries. Within those halls of glass and flame, silence was discipline, and every step echoed like judgment. Here ruled Queen Zyra, sovereign of the Dominion, conqueror of fleets, breaker of rebellions. Her people whispered her name with both reverence and dread. Tall, broad-shouldered, skin shimmering a deep jade under artificial light, she carried the air of one who had seen too much blood spilled to afford softness. Her long white hair, braided into a crown of status and honor, told the story of victories past. Zyra did not smile often. She did not need to. Her gaze alone could silence a council of generals. Yet behind the armor of a ruler was the quieter truth: she was also a mother. And it was motherhood, not empire, that placed a constant knot of worry in her chest. For her only daughter, the heir to Vorin, was nothing like her. Princess Nyra had been born into fire and expectation, but instead of steel, she carried laughter. Where Zyra's steps fell heavy with command, Nyra danced through corridors like starlight scattering over water. At 23 cycles, she was still considered young by Zenthri standards, yet already notorious for her antics. Her jade-green skin glowed brighter when she laughed, and her white hair, often a tapestry of braids woven with ceremonial gems, slipped free more often than not because she refused to sit still for the stylists. She had Zyra's sharp crimson eyes, yes, but they sparkled with mischief rather than command. The servants whispered of her escapades, sneaking into military drills disguised as a cadet, cracking codes in forbidden archives, even releasing the ceremonial sky lizards just to see what chaos would follow. The lizards devoured 3 ministers' hats before vanishing into the palace vents. Nyra had laughed until her eyes watered. The court, however, had not. Zyra, though furious, never showed weakness before her daughter. Instead, she disciplined her, corrected her, pressed duty upon her shoulders. "You are not just Nyra," she reminded her often. "You are the blood flame heir. You carry 1,000 years of dominion on your back. You cannot afford to be ordinary." But Nyra had other thoughts. To her, gilded halls were cages, and rituals were chains disguised as songs. She yearned for something unspoken, something beyond the reach of law and crown. And though Zyra could not name it, she felt the shift in her daughter. She saw it in restless eyes, in questions asked too boldly. The Dominion had survived war, betrayal, and conquest. Yet what unsettled the queen most was not an enemy fleet on the horizon, but the possibility that her daughter's heart might lead her somewhere no blade, no law, no throne could follow. The prison wing of Vorin Palace was unlike the rest of its crystalline halls. Where the council chambers glittered with living crystal and flowing light, the dungeon seemed carved from shadow itself. Veins of dull black stone absorbed the glow of torches, and the air carried a metallic tang, as if the walls remembered the blood spilled within them. Few of royal blood ever walked here. But Princess Nyra was no ordinary heir. She had slipped past the guards with practiced ease, moving barefoot so her jeweled anklets wouldn't betray her steps. Curiosity tugged at her like a living thing. She had overheard fragments at council meetings, a captured human, one who resisted breaking despite weeks of isolation. That alone made him different. Humans were fragile, quick to yield, their spirits crumbling under Dominion discipline. Yet this Joran Vale, remained unbent. Nyra had to see him for herself. Through the bars of his cell, she first glimpsed him. He sat cross-legged on the cold stone floor, posture weary but not defeated. His hair, a shade of dark chestnut, clung damply to his forehead, and his pale skin carried bruises like war paint. But it was his eyes that caught her, not the crimson fire of Zenthri, but a deep gray that seemed carved from storm clouds. They were tired, yes, but steady. Watching. Measuring. For a heartbeat, Naira forgot to breathe. "You're staring," he said softly, his voice hoarse but edged with wry humor. Her lips parted in shock. Prisoners were not supposed to speak with such ease, such nerve. Most bowed their heads, muttered, begged. This one met her gaze like an equal. "You're not supposed to be here," he added. "And yet here I am," she shot back, chin tilting proudly. The faintest smile ghosted his lips. For a moment, the dungeon felt less like a cage and more like a secret place carved only for the two of them. She pressed closer to the bars, lowering her voice. "Why do you resist? Others break. They all break." He leaned forward, matching her intensity. "Because I still remember who I am. And because some things are worth holding onto, even in the dark." His words slipped past her defenses, stirring something she could not name. Before she could speak again, footsteps echoed down the hall. A guard's voice barked orders in the distance. Naira's heart pounded. If she was caught here, her mother's wrath would be beyond imagining. Quickly, she pulled a small object from the folds of her robe, a polished crimson fruit, rare and imported from Earth itself. An apple. Joran's eyes widened, the gray storm breaking into something warmer, almost humanly tender. Their fingers brushed as she pressed it into his hand. That fleeting touch, so small, yet electric, sent a tremor through them both. "Eat," she whispered. "And remember, this is not a world only of chains." Then she was gone, vanishing into the shadows before the guards arrived. But as he bit into the fruit, its sweetness flooding his senses, Joran Vale realized he was no longer entirely alone. And Naira, retreating through secret passages, carried with her the dangerous spark of something forbidden, something that would not be easily extinguished. The night of the lunar convergence was sacred to the Zenthri. Once every cycle, the twin suns gave way to twin moons, their silver light merging into a pale river that bathed the palace spires. Songs of the ancients rose through the halls, deep and resonant, carrying the weight of 1,000 years of tradition. Queen Zyra stood upon the high balcony of the Hall of Ancestors, draped in ceremonial armor that gleamed like hammered jade. Her eyes, sharp as twin blades, swept the gathering. Ministers bowed, warriors saluted, and priests sang hymns. It should have been perfect. But something was wrong. Her daughter was missing. Naira, who was supposed to stand beside her as heir, had vanished from sight. At first Zyra thought it another childish defiance, but then a chill spread through her bones, a mother's intuition, sharper than any blade. She left the ceremony without a word, her guards scrambling to follow. Through dark corridors she strode, guided less by reason than by instinct. Down into the underlevels, past the carved stairways where crystal gave way to stone. The prison wing. Her jaw clenched, crimson eyes narrowing. And then she saw. Through the bars of the human cell, lit only by the pale wash of moonlight, her daughter lay curled upon the cold stone floor, fast asleep. And in his arms, protective, gentle, was the human, Joran Vale. His hand rested over her shoulder as though shielding her from the darkness. Their breaths had fallen into the same rhythm, rising and falling in quiet harmony. For a moment, the queen did not move. The sight struck her with the force of a blade. Anger surged hot, but beneath it, a pang she would never admit aloud, the mirror of something she had once lost. "Naira!" Her voice thundered through the dungeon like a storm. The guards jolted, weapons raised. Naira stirred awake, confusion flashing before she realized what had happened. "Mother, wait." But Zyra was already pulling the cell door open with a gesture that cracked the air. Energy fields shimmered and collapsed. She seized her daughter by the arm, dragging her upright. "Do you know what shame you bring upon this throne? Upon me?" Zyra's voice shook with fury, but also with fear. Joran rose slowly, despite chains weighing him down. It was not her fault. The queen's gaze snapped to him. The air itself seemed to tighten under her wrath. Silence, creature. You will not speak in my presence. Then punish me, Joran said, his voice steady despite the danger. But do not blame her for what was mine to offer. Zyra's fury blazed. For daring to touch her daughter. For daring to speak as though equal. Yet deep inside, a small, hateful part of her admired his defiance. Null chamber, she commanded coldly. The guard seized him, dragging him toward the chamber of silence where minds unraveled in darkness. Nyra screamed, trying to break free of her mother's grip. Please. He has done nothing. You have betrayed your blood, Zyra spat, holding her fast. Better chains for him than corruption for you. The heavy doors slammed shut behind them, the echoes ringing like judgment across the stones. And in that moment, beneath the sacred light of the lunar convergence, the first fracture split not just between mother and daughter, but across the destiny of the entire dominion. The null chamber was designed to unmake the mind. No sound, no light, no passage of time, only the weight of one's own thoughts echoing endlessly. Many prisoners screamed within hours. Most broke within a day. But when the guards hauled Joran Vale out after 3 rotations, expecting a hollow-eyed husk, they found him still standing. Weakened, trembling, but his storm-gray eyes burned with stubborn fire. He had not shattered. Whispers rippled through the palace like wildfire. Even Queen Zyra, though she masked it beneath cold command, felt the tremor of unease. How could a mere human endure what had unstrung hardened warriors? The answer came sooner than expected. During the 3rd cycle after the convergence, alarms rang through Voran's crystal halls. The Dominion's border scouts had intercepted a pirate vessel transmitting coded signals, coordinates aimed dangerously close to Voran itself. The encryption was alien, layered, and brutal. Dominion cryptographers struggled in vain, their algorithms folding under the tangled logic. In the war chamber, tension grew thick. Ministers argued, generals slammed fists against the crystal table. Every moment lost meant danger creeping closer. Then a young officer spoke hesitantly. Your Majesty, the human. His people are versed in these codes. Perhaps. Silence fell. All eyes turned to Zyra. Rage flared at the thought, but reason pierced through. If the human failed, he could be punished anew. But if he succeeded... Bring him, she commanded. Moments later, Joran was dragged in, wrists bound, his face still gaunt from confinement. His gaze met Zyra's, steady as ever. You claim endurance, she said coldly. Now prove worth. Break these codes, or I will see you cast into the void. The console was pushed before him. Strange alien glyphs shimmered across the crystalline screen. For a long heartbeat, the chamber held its breath. Joran studied the data, his fingers hovering hesitantly over the keys. Then, slowly, he began to work. Patterns emerged in his mind, fractals within fractals, repetition hidden beneath chaos. Sweat beaded on his brow, but his focus never wavered. Hours bled away. Ministers grew restless. Zyra's patience thinned. And then, suddenly, the encryption cracked. Coordinates spilled into clarity. The pirate vessel had been planning an ambush on Dominion supply lines. With this knowledge, fleets could be dispatched to intercept, saving thousands of lives. The chamber erupted in shock. He did it, one minister whispered. A human broke what 10 of our best could not, another muttered. Zyra's crimson eyes locked on Joran. Her fury warred with reluctant respect. He had not only endured the null chamber, he had proven useful. Release him from the chains, she ordered at last, her voice a blade sheathed in ice. He will serve the Dominion now, not as a prisoner, but as a tool. Let him live under watchful eyes. Joran said nothing, only straightened his shoulders as the shackles fell away. Yet in the flicker of his gaze, just for a moment, he sought out Naira, who stood at the edge of the chamber, breath caught between relief and awe. For the first time, the fate of a single human had shifted the will of an empire. The palace of Vorin had barely begun to breathe in the strange rhythm of fragile peace when the stars betrayed them. At dawn, alarms rippled across the Dominion's outer borders. Not the jagged wail of war, but the low chime of diplomatic approach. A silver vessel emerged from warp space, sleek and unfamiliar, its hull gleaming with the insignia of the Terran Concord. No weapons fired. No demands barked. Only a single, steady transmission pulsed through the void. We come in peace. We seek only to reclaim what was lost. Attached was a list of names: soldiers declared missing, scientists presumed dead. At the very top, Joran Vale. In the council chambers, voices clashed like swords. They dare trespass in our skies, thundered General Kor. It is a trick. A Trojan vessel. Perhaps not, countered Dr. Mela, her eyes alight with quiet hope. Their envoy brings no fleets, no guns. If their intent were war, they would have come with fire. Another elder growled. Intentions can be masked. A smiling knife still cuts. Through it all, Queen Zyra sat silent, her gaze fixed on the holographic projection of the Terran ship. Her people argued for pride, for caution, for vengeance. But she thought only of her daughter, of the human who had already unsettled the foundation of her dominion. Then Naira's voice broke through. Mother. They came for him. For Joran. What will you do? The chamber stilled. All eyes turned to the queen. Her answer came cold and sharp. I will not decide for him. He is no longer ours to give. He must choose. That evening, in the Eastern Observatory where twin suns often bathed the palace in violet and gold, Naira found Joran. He stood before the great glass wall, his profile etched in starlight, eyes fixed on the distant blue speck that was Earth. You knew, she whispered. Joran's shoulders tensed. I hoped. But no, I never truly believed they would come. And now that they're here? Naira's voice cracked. He turned, sorrow carved deep into his features. My sister is aboard that ship. For 5 years she searched for me. I cannot turn my back on her now. Not without shattering everything your mother already fears about my kind. Naira's fists clenched. So you'll leave me? After everything? Joran stepped closer, his voice low, urgent. It's not leaving. It's going home, so I can return freely. Not as a captive. Not as a shadow. But as a man who chose you in the open. Her breath hitched, tears burning. And if you never come back? He reached for her hand, but she pulled away. Still, his words lingered. Then you'll know I wasn't strong enough. But if I am? I'll return, not as a prisoner, but as proof that love can outlast even the stars. When the Terran envoy landed, the world watched. Broadcasts stretched from Earth cities to Zenthri outposts. And as Joran stepped forward, walking between two destinies, Queen Zyra's eyes narrowed. For in the arrival of one human ship, she saw the birth of something far greater than diplomacy. She saw the spark of a war, or the seed of a fragile peace that could change two civilizations forever. The grand atrium of Vorin had never held such a gathering. Beneath chandeliers of living crystal, humans and Zenthri sat together at long tables, diplomats and generals breaking bread with suspicion in their eyes. Music drifted alien harmonics woven with Terran strings, yet the air was taut, fragile, as though one wrong note would shatter the illusion of peace. Joran sat beside Naira, her emerald gown brushing against his borrowed tunic. He smiled politely when addressed, spoke carefully when questioned, but beneath the veneer his heart waged war. Earth, his people, were here. Yet every glance at Naira reminded him where he had truly lived these past years. At the head table, Queen Zyra watched with a warrior's stillness, her every thought hidden behind crimson eyes. She had given no speeches, no promises, only silence, and silence could be more terrifying than threats. Then Dr. Vale rose. Joran froze. His sister's face was etched with the same resolve he remembered from childhood, but now tempered with sorrow. She activated a small projector. A pale blue hologram flared to life above the tables. "Your Majesty," she began, bowing slightly toward Zyra. "Before we proceed further, there is truth you must know. Truth about my brother." The chamber hushed. Joran's pulse thundered. On the hologram, security footage played. A younger Joran in a lab coat, alarms blaring, explosions rocking a Terran border station. Data scrolled rapidly, his fingers flying across the console. Then undeniably, he transmitted an encrypted signal not to Earth, but to Zen-3 Command. Gasps rippled. Generals rose half from their seats, hands hovering near weapons. Naira's eyes widened in horror. "Joran, what is this?" Dr. Vale's voice wavered, but she pressed on. "He did not fall in battle. He surrendered voluntarily. Because 6 months earlier, he uncovered a secret buried deep in Earth's lunar colony, a dormant bioweapon, left behind by your empire during a failed invasion. A pathogen designed to unravel human DNA in 72 hours. Shock struck the hall like thunder. Joran's throat tightened. He searched for words, for defense, for truth. "It's real. I found it. I swore to stop it. The only way was from inside the Dominion." Queen Zyra rose at last, her voice cold enough to freeze fire. "And why not tell us directly, human? We are not cowards who hide behind disease." Joran's voice cracked. "Because the code was built to release fully if any Zen-3 attempted deactivation. Only I, an outsider, could bypass it. That's why I let myself be captured." For a heartbeat, silence reigned. Then Zyra's lips curved in something between scorn and pity. She pressed a command into the console before her. Another screen bloomed. "Classified archives, level Omega." "There is no such weapon," she said flatly. "It was destroyed 3 decades ago by my order. The data you saw was a ghost, crafted by Earth's own paranoid machines. You were deceived, Joran Vale. Used as a spy under the guise of savior." The words struck harder than chains. Joran staggered, the weight of betrayal crushing. The mission that had cost him freedom, love, years of his life, built on lies. He dropped to his knees, breath shallow. Around him murmurs swelled, traitor, fool, spy. But Naira moved. She knelt before him, her tears falling freely, yet her gaze steady. "I don't care why you came," she whispered. "I care why you stayed." The chamber, the galaxy itself, seemed to hold its breath. And for the first time, even Queen Zyra's eyes softened. The revelation hung over Vorin like a shadowed star. Joran Vale, once prisoner, once anomaly, now stood exposed as both deceived and deceiver. To some, he was proof of human frailty. To others, he was a pawn sacrificed on the altar of 2 empires' paranoia. But to Naira, he was still hers. The Dominion Council demanded judgment. The Terran Concord demanded his release. And between them, Queen Zyra loomed, the fulcrum on which peace and war now balanced. The trial chamber echoed with voices. "He is a spy," roared General Kor. spies are executed. He was lied to, argued Dr. Mela. Punish deception, not the deceived. He holds Dominion secrets, hissed another elder. Returning him to Earth risks everything. Through it all, Joran remained silent, head bowed. His eyes were storm-tossed seas, his spirit torn between worlds. Then Zyra spoke, her voice slicing the clamor. Enough. The chamber stilled. Her crimson gaze swept across Terran envoys, ministers, her daughter. This man's fate will not be dictated by rage nor pity. He will choose. Shock rippled through the hall. Zyra turned to Joran. Human. Your people call you home. My people see you as danger. Yet one voice remains that defies both, my daughters. What say you, Joran Vale? Earth or Dominion? Blood or bond? The silence that followed was suffocating. Joran lifted his head, meeting Zyra's unflinching eyes, then Nyra's trembling ones. When I came here, I thought duty defined me, he began, voice raw. That saving Earth was all that mattered. But Earth lied. My mission was a ghost. My cage, a choice I didn't even understand. He stepped forward, chains clinking faintly, until he stood between the two delegations. But in this cage, I found truth. Not in governments. Not in borders. In her. His gaze found Nyra, steady, unyielding. In the bond we share, I found who I am. And that, he turned, addressing both sides now, is not negotiable. A murmur surged, some horrified, others stunned. Nyra's lips parted, tears shining like glass. Zyra's expression hardened, yet the faintest tremor flickered across her face. For a long moment, she said nothing. Then, with a sigh that seemed carved from stone, she declared. Very well. He will remain within the Dominion. But not as prisoner. Not as pet. As guest. His worth will prove itself, or it will perish. My daughter's bond will not be denied, but nor will it go untested. The Terran envoys erupted in protest. This is abduction, one cried. Zyra's gaze burned. No. This is choice. And choice is a freedom your lies denied him. The chamber broke into chaos, shouts, accusations, fury. But amidst it, Nyra crossed the floor, ignoring every eye, every whisper. She reached for Joran's hand. This time, there was no hesitation, no fear. Their fingers laced, tight and sure. And in that moment, beneath the fury of nations and the judgment of a queen, two hearts chose each other over borders. The council chamber had barely emptied when the first cracks appeared. Earth's envoys stormed back to their vessel, their faces tight with fury. Their parting words rang bitter in the vaulted halls. You will regret this. The Concord does not forget its own. Zyra let them go, unflinching. But her generals were less composed. Reports of Terran fleets massing near neutral space began trickling in within hours. Supplies were shifted, ships recalled from distant patrols, and the Dominion's war engines stirred like a beast awoken too soon. In the quiet after the storm, Joran and Nyra found themselves in the moon gardens of Vorin, where bioluminescent vines wove constellations into the air. It should have been a place of peace. Instead, unease pressed close. You chose me, Nyra whispered, resting her head against his shoulder. But the cost may be war. Joran's jaw tightened. I didn't choose war. I chose truth. If Earth strikes, it proves they never wanted peace, they only wanted control. She looked up at him, eyes luminous in the soft glow. And what of your people? Do you not mourn leaving them behind? I mourn the lie they made of me, Joran admitted. But if peace is to mean anything, it has to be built on honesty. And right now, the only honesty I've found is here. With you. Her hand found his, squeezing tight, as though she could anchor him against the tides of fate. Meanwhile, Queen Zyra convened her war council. Generals clamored for immediate retaliation, for preemptive strikes. Others urged restraint, fearing escalation into a war neither side could truly win. Zyra raised her hand, silencing them all. "We will not strike first," she declared. "But neither will we cower. Let the humans bare their teeth. If they come for us, we will show them what it means to provoke a queen of the Dominion." Yet when the council dispersed, Zyra remained alone in the vast chamber. For the first time, doubt whispered in her mind. She had allowed her daughter's bond to sway the fate of empires. Was she a fool blinded by love, or a visionary daring to trust where hatred had failed? Her gaze drifted to the star maps glowing above the war table. Already, clusters of red marked disputed borders, like embers waiting for a breath to ignite them. That night, as Joran and Nyra stood at the edge of the gardens, a streak of fire cut across the heavens. Not a comet, an incoming vessel, burning through atmosphere. Sirens wailed across Vorin. Joran's heart lurched. That's no envoy. The sky split with thunder as the ship crashed into the outer districts. Flames erupted, casting crimson shadows against the towers. Nyra's voice trembled. Who would dare? And then the transmission came, jagged and cold, spilling across every Dominion channel. This is not Earth. This is something older. Something you should have destroyed when you had the chance. The shadows of war had come, but not from the direction anyone expected. The wreckage burned for hours, its flames clawing skyward like the fingers of a dying god. Dominion fire crews fought to contain the inferno, but strange sparks hissed and flared, energies that refused to die, as if the ship itself still lived. Joran and Nyra stood at the edge of the smoking crater, flanked by soldiers whose weapons never lowered. The vessel's hull was blackened, yet symbols glimmered faintly beneath the soot, jagged, angular glyphs neither Zenthri nor human. Nyra frowned, her voice barely above a whisper. I know those markings. They're from the Shiren codices. Mother spoke of them only once, an enemy wiped from memory. Joran's gaze hardened. Or one Earth never knew existed. Queen Zyra arrived, her cloak sweeping the ash. Her eyes narrowed at the wreck. Seal this sector. No one enters without my order. But before her guards could comply, the hull shuddered. Panels split open, groaning like a beast tearing its own skin. From within, a figure staggered forth, tall, skeletal, its frame wrapped in armor that pulsed with alien light. Its face was hidden behind a mask etched with the same runes. The soldiers aimed their rifles. Identify yourself. The being raised a hand, voice like gravel grinding against stone. Identify? You should remember us. We are the Cairn. The architects of the weapon your queen destroyed. And we are not finished. The words struck like lightning. Joran's chest clenched. The pathogen, it was real? Zyra's jaw tightened. It was real. But it was not ours. It was theirs. She gestured sharply, and the guards unleashed a volley of plasma fire. The cairn staggered, but did not fall. Its armor drank the energy, glowing brighter with each strike. With a sweep of its hand, a shockwave hurled soldiers aside like leaves in storm wind. Joran grabbed Nyra's arm, pulling her behind twisted wreckage. We can't fight it head-on. Nyra's eyes blazed with defiance. Then we find how to break it. Nothing is invincible. By dawn, the creature had vanished into Vorin's undercity, leaving ruin in its wake. Dozens lay dead, hundreds wounded. In the palace war chamber, voices thundered once more. This is proof Earth has unleashed them. No, this is Dominion negligence. They will come for us all. Joran slammed his fist against the crystal table, startling even the generals. You're both blind. This isn't about Earth or Dominion. It's about survival. That thing doesn't care about your borders, it cares about annihilation. The council fell silent. For the first time, they heard not a prisoner, not a spy, but a man who had stood in fire and lived. Zyra's gaze lingered on Joran. In his words, she heard the echo of her own fears. And in her daughter's eyes, locked fiercely on the humans, she saw the courage to bridge the unthinkable. The Cairn are awake, Zyra declared at last, her voice heavy with grim finality. If we do not stand together, Dominion and Earth both, we will all be ash. The skies above Vorin blazed with war. Not Earth's ships, not Dominion cruisers, but a tide of blackened vessels, each pulsing with the sickly light of the cairn. They came not to conquer, but to erase. Cities burned in silence, their weapons devouring both steel and flesh without distinction. For the first time in history, Earth and Dominion fleets flew side by side. Plasma arcs intertwined with Terran railguns, a chorus of fire answering the dark. Yet even united, their strength faltered. The cairn were endless. Deep within the palace command chamber, Joran Vale stood at the heart of the storm. His hands danced across consoles, weaving alien code with Terran algorithms, patching Dominion defenses into Terran firewalls. For every barrier the cairn tore down, he built two more. But he knew it wasn't enough. The archives had revealed the truth, the pathogen, the bioweapon, the lies. All fragments of a single design. The cairn fed not on blood, but on despair, on the collapse of trust. They had sown fear between Earth and Dominion for decades, waiting for this moment. And there was only one way to stop them. A failsafe. Buried deep within the crystal core of Vorin's defense grid. A pulse strong enough to collapse the cairn's living armor, rendering them vulnerable, but it required a living mind to anchor the sequence. And once engaged, that mind would burn out like a candle in storm. Joran's. Nyra's voice broke the silence. No, she stood before him, her hands trembling yet firm upon his. There must be another way. You always find another way. Joran smiled, weary but unshaken. Not this time. Every pattern ends, Nyra. Even mine. But you're the reason this one mattered. Tears streaked down her cheeks. If you do this, I'll lose you. If I don't, you'll lose everything. He leaned closer, pressing his forehead to hers. I was lost long before you found me. But with you, I finally lived. Remember that, not my end. Queen Zyra watched, silent, her heart a battlefield. She had fought to keep her daughter from weakness, to keep her empire from collapse. Yet here stood a human, frail, mortal, prepared to do what even her strongest warriors could not. She placed a hand on Nyra's shoulder. Her voice was low, but steady. Let him go, child. Love is not chains. Love is the courage to release. Nyra's sob cracked like glass. But she nodded, her fingers slipping from Joran's. The sequence began. Light surged through the palace, veins of crystal igniting as if the world itself awoke. Joran's body convulsed, tethered to the grid, his veins glowing with burning code. The cairn felt it instantly. Their fleet shifted, shrieking, clawing toward the palace. Too late. With a final cry, Joran unleashed the pulse. A wave of white fire roared across the heavens, tearing through the cairn armada. Their vessels shriveled, their armor dissolved, their shadows ripped screaming from the stars. Silence followed. A silence heavy, holy. When the light dimmed, only fragments of crystal and ash remained. The cairn were gone. The Dominion still stood. Earth still breathed. And Joran Vale was no more. Days later, under the twin suns, Nyra stood in the moon gardens where bioluminescent vines still bloomed. At her side was Queen Zyra, stern yet softened by grief. Together they lit a lantern and released it into the sky. Zyra spoke first. He was a human. Yet in the end, he burned brighter than any Zentree star. Nyra's voice broke, yet carried strength. He was more than human. He was ours. And he will never be forgotten. The lantern drifted upward, one among thousands released across Vorin and Earth alike. A new festival was born that day, shared between two worlds once divided. They called it the Fifth Light, a tribute not just to Joran Vale, but to the fragile, defiant truth he had left behind. That love, courage, and choice were stronger than borders. And in that truth, humanity had finally found its place among the stars.